my relationship to the great outdoors was how many miles can I do in a day? How many summits can I hit in a day? And there's still a part of me that thrives on that. But you have to, that's not her job to come along for those journeys, so I'm looking at this mountain that I desperately want to climb again. And it's like she'll never be up there, but we're here looking at it and you just learn to appreciate what you can do. Like what yeah, this is as good as it's going to get and it's great.
Wake and Wander, Episode 2. My guest today is Brad Ryan. This episode was recorded aboard the HX Nansen down in Antarctica. Brad stuck out to me as a passenger on the ship because he was traveling with his 93-year-old grandmother named Joy. When she was 85, they reunited after not talking to each other for a decade and set out on a journey to travel to every national park in the United States. And it was interesting to hear the story about why they were doing this together and what it was like to travel with someone who was so far away from your age. They've been traveling together now for 9 years, and Grandma Joy is currently the oldest person on our boat. It turned into a pretty emotional conversation with Brad. Throughout it, he shares the trials and tribulations of traveling with your grandmother and how we can learn to travel a little bit differently as we get older. This podcast will be talking travel, talking to guests from all over the world. Let's go. I got to say, I think you're the first guy I've ever interviewed to roll up to the interview with a huge bag of pills.
They're not. That sounds really shady.
Well, tell everybody kind of just a brief introduction, and we'll go through your whole story. But for people that don't know who you are and who your grandma is, give us a little background of what you're doing and what your life has been like for the past year or so.
Yeah, well, I'm from Ohio, a little town called Zanesville, Ohio, southeastern part of the state, the hilliest part of Ohio, the only place where you have any opportunity to actually hike up a hill in the whole glacier-flattened wasteland that is Ohio. No offense, Buckeyes. I've been there my whole life, so I feel like I can say that. So my grandmother and I were born 51 years apart in Zanesville, Ohio. She has been widowed for 30 years, and really throughout her life, I would say working class, and raised 3 sons and didn't really have the means to travel. When I was a kid, I only got to go to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park because my sister was a clogging champion, like a national clogging champion. So every year,
What's clogging?
like it's like a dance where they put the thing on their, it's like a little tappy thing on their,
Like rhythmic tapping.
yeah, and they it was torture
Okay.
to have to do that every year. But they had the national championships in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and all the fathers and sons would just like sneak out and play miniature golf, and maybe drive up to the Smoky Mountains and whatnot. And so that was all I got to do for vacation. And my grandmother would go to Lake Okeechobee, Florida, with my grandfather, who was a perch fisherman. And so every winter they would leave and come back in the spring with a big bag of seashells and some orange flavored gumballs. And to me, like Lake Okeechobee was this paradise. I didn't know what it was, but just the idea of going to sunny Florida and whatnot, that seemed like a big deal to me at the time because we never really got to travel. Long story short, I didn't get a passport until I was 20, and my grandmother was the one who took me to the airport for my study abroad trip to Kenya when I was a student at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Then we became estranged after my parents got divorced while I was in college. I did not speak to my dad after that, and I cut my grandmother off at that point in time too because my father cheated on my mom. There was a confrontation and he physically assaulted me and she was standing there. And so I cut them off at the same time. And then, I had this experience hiking the Appalachian Trail during that period of estrangement. I thought about being a little boy and going to our state park near our home, and my grandma would take me to our local state park, and she was the one who would take her shoes off, and we would have like empty Cool Whip containers and fish nets, a little fish net to catch minnows and crayfish under the rocks and all that stuff. And so she was really the one who kind of opened my eyes to the world of nature and how much magic is there. And I think I was reminded of a lot of that when I was out in the wilderness for 6 months. And So I decided that after almost 10 years, it was time to reach out to her and see if we could patch things up. And so she was 80 years old when I found out that she had never seen a mountain in her life. And I wanted to, I remember just having the thought at that moment, like I could never live with myself if I didn't just take her on a little road trip somewhere to see the mountains and let her have that very modest dream achieved. And then I got accepted into a graduate program in veterinary public health at Ohio State, and then I got into vet school right after that. So I just got swept away in the current of academia, and then there's so many layers to the story. But during my fourth year of vet school, I was on my radiology rotation, and a second year vet student at Ohio State committed suicide, and it brought up a lot of the mental health challenges that I had faced during that 4-year program, and I just felt like I had to. I longed for that version of myself that was standing on Mount Katahdin at the end of that 6-month Appalachian Trail through hike. That guy who felt like he could do anything, sky's the limit. I really lost that during vet school, being in that pressure cooker of perfectionism and type A personalities and all these specialists and people that I was comparing myself to and feeling like shit all the time. So I don't know why. There were a million ways that I could have turned in that moment, and I just decided I wanted to call her and see if she wanted to. I wanted to be in nature, and I thought, okay, this is a good opportunity to do that at the same time. So we took.
Why did you think to call your grandma, not a friend or?
I think that it's funny. Like, it's taken me some time to sort of patch together the things that. The ingredients that I think are necessary for a joyful life. I think about that theme of joy a lot, not just because that's her name, but
that is her real name.
That's
right?
really her name. Yeah, it really is. And I think what I was missing in vet school was, despite the fact that I was around a lot of people, I didn't have a sense of safety in terms of just being able to reach out for help and not feel judged or weak. That kind of thing.
Well, because your dad, you had cut ties with him.
Right.
Sounds like that was a horrible incident, so that makes sense.
Well, that was like after a very long history of other types of abuse too.
Of course.
So yeah.
And then your mom, were you close
Well,
with her?
I was, and we did talk about things, but yeah, I think that because I knew she was alone and had that. It was something that I wanted to do for a while, and I was like, at this point she's 85 years old. I'm like, if you keep playing Russian roulette with time, you're gonna blow it. This is the perfect time, and I just thought, yeah, I want to be with somebody who I know loves me, who understands me, who sees value in me, even if I get a C on an exam, or whatever, and I just want to be in my one of the happiest places in the world for me has always been the Great Smoky Mountains. And the spirit of that land has always called me back. It was part of the Appalachian Trail. It was part of my childhood, and it was close enough to drive to in a night. So we took off at like 5:00.
Well, I think just to stop you for 1 second, I think what you're saying resonates with a lot of people, and obviously it does. The following you guys have put about, because what you're saying, parents can be really hard. They love you, but it's like, get an A in your homework, do your homework, do all this stuff. And grandparents are just one separation from that.
And that separation means that it comes with almost no expectations.
Exactly. So that makes sense now to me, hearing
it's a safer place to land. So yeah, I mean, I called her. I was looking at this guy, this man who was in his early 20s, who had taken his life instead of showing up for a urinary exam.
This was your classmate.
Well, I didn't know him, but he was a colleague in our vet school.
It doesn't matter if you knew him. It's still close enough to impact you.
Yeah, I mean, he was. I mean, I knew. I had a sense of empathy for what his mindset might have been like at that point in time. Suicidal ideation was something that I didn't think was ever going to be a part of my challenges in life, and it's. You just never know. You just don't know what circumstances are when you're in an environment like that, high pressure, and it's 18. I went from just getting up in the morning and breathing in the fresh air and listening to the birds all day to being trapped in a fluorescent lit study room for 12 hours a day, you know.
Yeah, and when you're sharing some of those thoughts, that depression or just not feeling like yourself, and then suicides can be romantic.
It makes you feel good to think about it when you're in that place.
Right, but then you see someone do it who's so close to you and so similar to you, and then maybe that's a little bit of a wake-up call of like, wait, no, it's not that romantic.
It's not that romantic, and the statistics show that I think it's a decision that's made in seconds. You know, going from a thought of suicide to actually doing it when the right mix of, or the wrong mix of ingredients come together at the wrong time. You know, it can be an option for people that it can just happen so quickly, and that's why I talk about it, and I go to vet schools, and I am honest about this kind of thing, because there's a lot of it's like this, you said, in your mind it's this romantic idea, it's this only sense of control you have in the chaos of your life, all these things that feel overwhelming, and yet I have the power to make it all go away if I want to. And that actually, I think for me, that was like a dopamine release. It's like this sick feeling of pleasure, this idea of taking your life when you're in that place. And yet you're also really usually putting on a happy face. So the people in my life that I've known who have committed suicide have been like the life of the party, you know? And in fact, Ohio State has the largest vet class of the entire country. We have like 160 plus students in each graduating class. And I was voted like the best sense of humor, the guy with the best sense of humor out of 160 plus people. Like, I was the funny one. I was the happy one. And so you wear your mask, you learn to wear your masks very effectively, because you carry such shame that of what's going on, this not enoughness that's in your mind. You don't want to share that with anybody. So you learn to play your hand a little bit differently so that people buy into the illusion that you're okay. And yeah, it was tough. And I just, looking at that guy's face and seeing that, wow, he really did it. Like, someone that was in the place that I was in not too long ago actually did it, and he's gone forever, and he's got a mom, and I can see the devastation. And the other thing that was just this idea that nobody understood, like, how this could happen. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, are we fooling ourselves? Like, this is not a healthy system. This is like, it's an institution where learning is punitive. There's no joy in this process. There's no empowerment in this process. An unhealthy comparison at every turn instead of community building and collaborating. And Ohio State has changed a lot. Our dean at Ohio State, he'd only been there less than a month when this happened, and he's still the dean today, and I've maintained a great relationship with him. He's completely transformed the culture at the Ohio State University College of Veterinary Medicine. There are no grades anymore. He said performance has never been better, because students are actually relaxed, and they're studying together, and they're building each other up.
Was that a result of this suicide?
If you asked him, he would tell you that was a formative, life-changing experience in his career. And he was a brand new dean.
What year was that?
This happened in 2015, the fall of 2015. Yeah, because that's when Grandma Joy's road trip began.
Would you describe it as a wake-up call, a motivator?
I just knew in my heart, like, I am not this person. I love life.
Because you remember yourself being free on the app trail, like you're saying.
And just being in the woods as a boy and walking down to a dead tree and whacking it with a 2x4 and watching the flying squirrels jump out. And, you know, like, that's and I've always loved wildlife. That's why I went to vet school.
And then here you are trapped in this cage.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's very, yeah. It's strange how your idealism and realism can be so misaligned, and that happens to veterinarians once they graduate too. You know, they have this idealism about what being a vet is and what their life is going to be like, and then they graduate and people treat them like crap and leave negative reviews on Yelp about them and say you're a money grubber and all these things, right? And then you find out it's just a job. like any other job, and your job, although it can, I think your job can be your calling. I don't think it's healthy for your job to be your identity. You know what I mean? Because that's where people, that's, if that were true, we wouldn't have so many veterinarians committing suicide, because I don't think they really know who they are. And I knew who I was because I hiked the AT.
I don't think it's healthy to have any one aspect of yourself be your identity, because then if you lose touch with that, then you're lost.
Or that if I have a DVM behind my name, or a PhD, or an MSc, or whatever, if I have these letters behind my name and then I walk into a conference hall and that line of letters is just, and it's never enough, and then you become a diplomat of something, and that's gonna, then it's gonna fill my cup, or so it can be, you know, I see people going down that path, or it can be, oh, if I just lost 2 more pounds, or if I just had 6-pack abs, or if I could just,
Fill in the blank. Yeah.
fill in the blank, and then I'm complete.
That's our consumerism, American upbringing and culture, I think. We're not succeeding unless we're consuming or getting that next thing.
Yeah, and really what I found is that for me, a fulfilling life is banking memories and experiences and connections, which is something that I always intuitively knew that, but as you get older and you start to think about these existential ideas, what is a well-lived life? What is a joy-filled life? No matter, there are so many things you can file under these other categories, but for me, it always comes back to experiences and connection.
I think we're getting into a lot of the content that your book is going to be about, but let's just go back to 2015 real quick so we can
All
get
right.
there in the timeline. So you had this experience in veterinarian school, and then you reached out to your grandmother. You just wanted to take her to see a mountain.
Yeah, and I'm in the radiology suite, which is, completely dark because we're interpreting radiographs and everything like that. And I just walked down to the end of the hallway and I called her on my phone and just said, how would you feel about seeing your first mountain this weekend? She said, what time are you picking me up? Just like that. And I said, well, I can't pick you up, but I'll call my stepfather and he'll bring you up. So she met me in the parking lot of the teaching hospital around 5 o'clock, and I have a photo of me still wearing my scrubs that I didn't take off. And she and I drove through the night, and we got to the Elkmont campground at Great Smoky Mountains National Park around 1:30 in the morning, pouring down rain. And she held the golf umbrella over my head while I put the tent together, and we had to use our flashlights because if we had the headlights on, everybody would have awakened and been really angry.
Wait, she was 84?
She was 85.
85. And you were camping?
We camped.
Tent camping.
Yeah.
The first night.
Yep.
Dude, that's awesome.
On an air mattress.
That's awesome.
On an air mattress, and
she was keen on it? No problem?
Yeah. And I have a photo of her smiling inside the tent to prove it. So, and I think she was.
Were you worried about that? I mean, did you know that she was going to like camping?
I didn't even really think about it because she's always been this. She's never complained about anything. She's, you've met the 93-year-old version of her, so there's a point of natural decline that I'm dealing with right now. But that's inevitable. She's still a rock star for her age, I think, and she's in Antarctica right now. She's the oldest person on this boat. But I mean, it's, this. I've watched this woman. I keep going on tangents and whatnot, but I've watched her roll down sand dunes and do class 3 rapids in Alaska at 91 and hike really long distances and really rough terrain, and smiled through all of it, and laughed through all of it. And that first night when she crawled into the tent and looked up at me, and I took her picture right before I jumped in, I just knew. I could never have predicted that we would end up where we did. But I was just like, this is the best I've felt in so long. This is the most human I've felt in so long. I completely lost myself in that institution of academia. And then to be like breathing in that air, even though it was raining, it was just like that beautiful smell, and seeing her smile. And then she fell off the air mattress twice and just I could just hear her chuckling and see the air mattress jiggling. I could just see her little feet sticking up out of the end, and she got back on and just laughed. And the rain stopped the next day, and we were able to go see the elk and Cataloochee, and they were bugling, and then we got to a trailhead, and it said 2.5 miles up to the Alum Cave Bluffs, and she said, "I think we can do that." And her attitude was very much like her words were, "I'm going to get up this mountain if it kills me." And what was so magical is seeing these people, as she's like grabbing on to any tree she can find or any root she can find to get up the next bend in the trail, and to see these people like just light up when they saw this old lady climbing this mountain and giving her high fives. And we got to the top finally, and everybody we met along the way, which were scores of people, and everyone's giving her a standing ovation and applauding as we walk up, and all these college boys that are on break are asking for selfies with her and stuff like that. I'm like, this feels really, really good. This there's something to this. And it allowed me, at the time, it just allowed me to go back to vet school with a widened lens and just be like, just pass the boards, get through this nightmare, and move on with your life. This is going to get better. And then my first year on the job was pretty underwhelming, I would say. It just wasn't the be all end all that I thought it was going to be. And the whole time I'm working, I'm just looking at an atlas, thinking about what would be a good park number 2. And so I'm thinking Yellowstone, because that's the one I wanted to go to the most. And then I start to learn about all these other places that I'd never heard of, like Badlands National Park, and that's on the way. And so then that just was like, oh shoot, I'm in trouble now. And then I ended up creating this big 21 national park circuit.
How many days were you
We
playing?
did that for 28 days.
Okay, so when you went to Smokey, that was her first national park ever.
Yeah.
And at 84, 85, she hiked 5 miles?
Round trip, yeah. She was committed to it.
We're learning a lot about where you were at. Where was she at this time of her life? Why was she?
So she had worked a minimum wage job. Okay, so my grandfather died in 94. They had just retired, both of them. And he had an aggressive form of cancer. They were at Lake Okeechobee, actually, and he was in pain in his back, and was diagnosed with an aggressive type of cancer. They said he would be gone probably in a couple months, and he died on Father's Day, 2 months to the day. And she said that she was sitting in her house coat for about a week, and she looked at herself in the mirror and said, "You better get it together, old girl. This is not going to end well if you don't get out of this house coat." So she just went down to our local grocery store and applied for a job in the deli, and she worked there from her mid-60s until she was 80.
Wow, so she went back to work, essentially.
Yeah, I think she needed the money to patch her roof and things like that, but I think she just wanted to be around people. Her instinct was just, I need to be doing something, or I'm going to be really, really, I'm going to be in trouble, just mentally. I think, yeah. So she had the wherewithal to find community, she would go to the local grocery store, the local elementary school, and she would read to the special needs children, and she would walk every day in the cemetery with her dog. That's what she spent her lifetime getting exercise, just by walking around the local cemetery
where her husband was buried.
He wasn't buried there, but yeah, just that visual of this woman just walking around a cemetery her whole life, that was in my mind as well. Like, no. She has too much life in her for that.
So she needed the spark from you too.
Yeah, we were both lonely for different reasons.
It came together, seems, at the exact right time.
Yeah. She just yeah. So she was. Yeah, I think she was just sitting in her house at that point because she retired. She stopped working at the grocery store when she was about 80, and at this point, so it had been 5 years of her just sort of hanging around town.
It's just a little bit of commentary for a minute, because my dad passed away in 2015. I'm coming up on his 10-year anniversary, so I've just been thinking a ton about that. And early in our lives, we it was a fine relationship, but it was very superficial, and I always wanted more. But just the conditions in our life weren't right until I was older, in my mid-20s. So I look at a story like yours where you guys didn't really connect till she was in her 80s, and you could be like, oh man, I wish I would have started earlier. And I think a lot of people in life with their parents have that feeling of, man, like I wish we had that time back, or we wouldn't have wasted all that time. But I'm learning now, as I reflect on my own life and hear stories like yours, you can't control life like that. The conditions need to be right, and both people need to participate, and the conditions for both people need to be ready for you to come together. It's just amazing to me how, like, at those exact times in your life when you needed each other, that's when it happened. And that's like, that gives me comfort, because now I can look back and say, well, no, it's like I didn't waste that time, or like I did try. Like, we both tried. Like, my dad and I tried for 5, 6, 7 years before we really hit it off. But we never gave up. That was the important thing. And we just kept trying. We kept staying in touch. And I just think that's such a powerful message for people. It's important just to keep sight on that. You connected with your grandmother when she was 83, 85.
Well,
right?
I mean,
whatever.
I reach
so
out. Yeah,
just,
80s. I mean, people are. If I meet somebody and they tell me they came from a completely functional, happy family, I can't believe them. I just don't believe that exists. People love to pretend for some reason, instead of just leaning into the fact that, like, we actually can really bond over our crazy family stories, and that's okay. And there are aspects of my life where I've been able to sort of, I mean, this is an extreme example of me trying to put a pretty bow on my life, but we don't get that with everybody. They're always, people have falling out with somebody, and then they die, and then they have to deal with that the rest of their life. And you can't beat yourself up about that, because it takes two people to come together, to be willing to come together and pick up the phone, call each other, whatever. And that's the way it was with my dad too. I mean, he could have called me just as easily as I could have called him, and it just never happened. But I have this.
And we'll get back to your story now, but I just wanted to say that because I know people like that who are struggling, and I did myself, and I see that in my family too. And the important thing is not to give up, because it can still happen. The conditions can change, and both of you can change to where the environment is now ready. And when it happens, you need to be willing to do it.
Before we did that, I mean, I guess I should say, I got back from the Appalachian Trail, and then it started with just, hey, can I come over to your house, and maybe you can teach me how to make banana bread, or teach me how to make cookies or something. And she was kind of not nice to me. She was pretty bitter, pretty resentful, pretty hurt,
At you?
Yeah.
For what?
For cutting her off. And 10 years pass, and then you can't just be like, okay.
Want to make banana bread?
Was it a cup of flour, you said?
Yeah.
It just, it just doesn't work like that. So I actually at the time was like, this is not working in the kitchen. So let's go down to Blue Rock, where you took me when I was a little boy to catch frogs. And so we did some hikes down there. And one day we heard this massive splash, and we looked down, and we just saw this huge beaver. Like, you could see the tail just gliding right under the surface of the water. And we didn't even know that beavers lived in that park. And we just looked at each other, and our eyes were lit up and smile from ear to ear. And that was sort of like, believe it or not, it was like a beaver that was like this icebreaker to sort of reset everything.
Did you guys ever have a conversation about the reset, or was it just understood?
I think there was just she had to get over it. She's that. Well, you'll see that. I mean, I guess you won't see until you read the book, but really, like, I think the biggest theme of this whole journey has been this journey from grievance to grace, that I've had to take myself on that journey, and understand that seeing my grandma do it at different points in life, to my mother, to me, to my father, to see my father do it to my grandmother, and to do it to me, and then I model it, and I held a grudge with an iron fist for 20 years and never sent him a Father's Day card and felt good about it. And you get to a point in life where you just feel like, you just realize that I can't single-handedly heal that. I cannot go back in time and make my grandmother's childhood differently so that she gave my father the love he needed to be the father I needed him to be. That is impossible. But what I can do, or what I did do, was drive over 60,000 miles with this woman and ask her every question I possibly could to get as much of the story as I could, given the limitations of her own aging brain and the traumas that she's blocked out that she'll never remember, that she can't share with me. I mean, you can't put it all together, but I know enough about her childhood to understand that there was no way that she was going to be a perfect mother.
After Smokey, you set off on this 20, how many parks? You had the
we
road
did
trip
we
plan?
did we did 21 national parks in 28 days.
And you had the incredible opportunity of just captive audience. You're in the car. So you could go through all this rebuilding.
And that first road trip was gnarly. I mean, we laughed a lot, and we had a lot of beautiful moments, but we had some hard conversations. We fought a lot.
About the past?
Yeah, I think I didn't have my father there to yell at and to hold accountable for my trauma. And so I was going to unleash it on the woman who made the monster, basically. That's a kind of a peek behind. And I don't want to overstate it, but I was really trying to find closure somehow. And I wanted her to say things a certain way for me to be satisfied with it. And yet she didn't have an emotional vocabulary. She didn't think about life the way I did. She's a different person from a different era. She's a silent generation, Depression era woman.
I really understand what you're saying. Yeah, I think everyone can, looking at their parents and grandparents for sure.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Didn't have the emotional vocabulary.
No. I'm like, and if I tell you how I want you to say it and you just repeat it back to me, it means nothing.
Correct.
So you just, but I had, that's my journey, and it took, so that's the thing. It's like on the surface, it's this people think it's like this travelogue or just like this adventure of intergenerational adventure to see 63 national parks. But really it was me trying to understand my family history and myself and try to make peace with all of it so I can just be, just set myself free and not be in this perpetual trauma loop from a past that only I'm thinking about.
Do you remember a specific park where you reached a milestone like that, where you felt like you had turned a corner with her? Was it after just a couple parks? Was it 20 parks? Because eventually you went to every national park, right?
Yeah.
Or you're still working on that?
No, she broke the world. She's the oldest person in the world to go to all 63 national parks. So 85 to 93. She finished last year when we went to American Samoa.
At what point did you go viral? Now you guys are influencers. You have a huge following on social media. Your story is, tomorrow you're on Good Morning America, right?
Sometime next week, supposedly.
Newspapers across the country, People Magazine, see your face everywhere now. When did that happen?
That happened in August of 2019, I believe.
Was it after you did all the parks or
No,
during the time?
We weren't even halfway there.
So tell us about that, how it built up to that.
So Smokies was the first road trip. Then we had the lower 48 loop, 21 parks. Then we did a road trip down the East Coast through the Appalachians. So we did Shenandoah, Congaree National Park in South Carolina, and then the national parks of Florida. And then we did a road. Then in June of, I think it was 2019. I'm getting like confused. It was either 2018 or 19. I think 2019.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. We did a road trip to Acadia National Park, and that was the first road trip where I took somebody with us. And so I brought a classmate, friend of mine from vet school, Dr. Jessica Christine, and we drove up to Acadia National Park. And like, I hardly have any photos of us together because I'm always just following her around with a camera and documenting her. And obviously I set the Instagram account as Grandma Joy's Road Trip because I just saw her as sort of the goal. The mission was really, I wasn't conscious about what I was doing for myself. I was really focused on like, I've got to pack as much into this life that she has left. And
but when you started that Instagram account, did you have hopes of it catching on?
I didn't even think about
it. As like a catalog?
No, it's because catalog, and I didn't have any really I had no photo editing skills or whatever, so just to be able to like sharpen it up a little bit and add some saturation or whatever, it was just a way to like simply make, just in a simple way, make it look a little prettier, and then tag the national park so that it was part of the archive that we had been there. That I wasn't thinking anything more than that. But we were tent camping the whole way, and except Florida, we didn't camp there. But at any rate, Jessica took a photo of us on Sand Beach in Acadia National Park, and we just have our arms extended to the air, and it's a really, really joyful photo. One of my favorite photos, and it was just a rare photo of us together. And I tagged Acadia in that, and they were like, "Tell us more about this, whatever, and can we share this?"
Because that was your last national. No, not
That
the
was
last
that
one.
was like part 28.
28. Okay.
Yeah. And so I wrote a little blurb up. The grandmother that never saw a mountain. Now we're trying to see all 63 national parks, blah, 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 blah. And like a month went by and I didn't even think about it. And it was a Sunday morning. And right before we went to bed, there was a mass shooting, I think, in there were two back-to-back mass shootings in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. It happened within 12 hours, I think. And that was the morning that Acadia shared that photo of us.
A month later?
No. The morning of the mass shoot. Yeah, a month
No,
after
but
they
after
asked
your
me.
visit. Yeah, a month after.
No, this was at the end. So we were there in June, and they posted this like 2 months later.
Wow.
Yeah. So I wasn't really even, I had no idea what their plan was, but they just happened to post that on this really dismal news morning, and somebody shared that on Reddit. Just some random person shared that on Reddit, and it was the most likes any post from Acadia National Park ever got. And then Reddit, it blew up on Reddit. It was like #1 on some feel good thread that exists or whatever. And then, I mean, it was almost instantaneous. Like it wasn't just national media. It was BBC and Al Jazeera, and it was just this global,
And all of a sudden, you're just inundated with Instagram messages from these outlets?
Yeah, they were just contacting me on Instagram, and I was working at the National Zoo at the time and trying to like juggle all of this stuff. And at the end of that first week, and the local outlets in Washington, D.C. were asking me to like meet them at some of these different scenic areas in D.C. And I did like live interviews and Rock Creek Park. And it was just this absurd thing, where I really didn't want to talk about my mental health, and I didn't want to talk about like the darker side of the story. So I just kept it completely focused on her, and that's okay, because that's part of the story. It's true. I just wasn't ready to talk about. I was suicidal, guys. And
yeah, like first interview. Yeah, I was going to ask that.
I didn't want to be the buzzkill.
Of course, yeah, of course.
So anyway, yeah. So it went viral, and then it was when the private journey became public, because then it was, it was there's a lot of media about us. We've done a lot of interviews, and it was sort of this surreal moment where we had this pathway now to actually achieve the dream, because corporate sponsors were stepping up to help us.
Yeah, were you financing all this travel for her?
To be able to take her on that road trip around the lower 48, I did a GoFundMe, and I think I made like $3,000.
Was that just friends and family mostly?
Just friends and family. Yeah, people that I knew on Facebook, just gas money. Yeah, we ate ramen noodles and mandarin oranges most of that.
She would eat that?
Month. Yeah.
She didn't mind?
No. We have lots of ramen noodle pictures.
My grandmother was full-blood Italian. There's no way she would eat a ramen noodle.
We did some like gas station fried chicken buckets too, things like that.
I mean, just her personality would have to be so flexible to do this journey in a sense, to be in the car that long, to camp, to eat whatever.
I think she loved it though. You'd have to ask her. Of course she loved it. I mean, she really, because we ended up having our rules, she would, I had to do all the heavy lifting, get the cooler out and do all this stuff, but she put the tent together pretty much by herself, and it was a fairly big tent, but she learned how to do it. She felt purposeful, and of course, being in that little town your whole life, that sucks. And now you're setting up a tent under a redwood tree in California.
Did you guys just blow up on Instagram overnight, essentially?
It was kind of, I mean, it was. We for me, to go from 4 followers to 4,000 in like 10 minutes was a big deal. So, I mean, it's not like, I don't want it to be Kardashian level, because I like the fact that it's enough notoriety to have some opportunities that I couldn't do on my own, and we can still go places and not be hassled and that kind of thing.
So what were the corporate sponsors when they came into the fold? They were trying to get you to go farther into the world?
Yeah, so we had some sponsors that the first goal was just to finish the lower 48, and so we did that like within a couple months after. By September, it went viral early August. By early September, we were on the road for 45 days and did all that until they added New River Gorge National Park in West Virginia. So we had to come back and finish. But at the time, we did finish the lower 48. And then we went, like immediately after that, we went straight to Hawaii.
Hawaii volcanoes.
And
Haleakala.
Yep. And then on January 1st, 2020, so it was 2019 when all that happened. January 1st, 2020, we flew to St. John, did Virgin Islands National Park.
Now, were you sponsored to do all that at this point, or are you guys still self-funding?
So Alaska Airlines gave us the flight, and we had different private residents that gave us places to stay.
So you guys became influencers just overnight?
Yeah, because it was unusual to see people 50 years apart traveling together, even on this, like, right. So I mean, it continues to be like we get stared at wherever we go because it's such an unusual thing, and it breaks across cultures too. People are endeared to this relationship that we have, and people feel compassion, or not compassion, but like nostalgia for grandparents and that kind of thing.
So I'm curious, this national park circuit, you had previously hiked the Appalachian Trail. You're a fit guy. You're an outdoorsy guy.
Right.
You walked 2,000 miles.
Now I'm driving everywhere.
Now you're driving everywhere. And now I imagine, despite that 5-mile hike she did on the first park, that most of it's what you're doing is very front country, very just not getting in deep into the back country like you were accustomed to. How has that been for you traveling in this way?
That's a good question, because my relationship to the great outdoors was how many miles can I do in a day? How many summits can I hit in a day? And there's still a part of me that thrives on that. But that's not her job to come along for those journeys.
Right. So it's like, in that sense, you're talking a lot how, like, you're being honest that, yeah, like a lot of this journey was about your mental health and self-improvement and closure, but you really were giving to her, because you, in terms of what you were actually doing, you have to be her guide. You have to be her caretaker.
Make sure she doesn't break a hip. Make sure she doesn't slip on a route.
You're not going for that peak. You're not. It's not.
No, we're looking at it now.
Right.
Yeah. No, I climbed Kilimanjaro during vet school because I was over there doing some wildlife rotations, and you only get a 2-week break, and I climbed Kili, and then last year she got to see it. So I'm looking at this mountain that I desperately want to climb again, and it's like she'll never be up there, but we're here looking at it, and you just learn to appreciate what you can do. Like yeah, this is as good as it's going to get, and it's great. She got to look at this mountain that I climbed, and the tallest peak in Africa. The woman who never saw a mountain is looking at an unobstructed view of the tallest mountain in the continent of Africa, that kind of thing. So, and also just walking her pace, it's like I realize how much of a hurry I was in, even though I tried not to be when I was hiking the AT. And she's just like, look at all the colors of lichen, like staring at this log, and I didn't know there were so many shades of green, but she's literally captivated by that. And then I take a look at it, and I'm like, that is really beautiful. You're right. Or look at this bug.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Slowing you down, for sure.
Slows you down. And also, I think, well, you travel, obviously, a lot. And I don't know, how often do you feel like, I hope I come back here, or I can't wait to see this again? Or are you just like, this is it, and I'm on to the next thing? Because for her, I mean, I guess I always lived my life. I've lived my life kind of thinking, well, this would be nice to come back and see again. But she was always, at her age, is like, nope, this is the one and only time I'm going to see this.
That's very interesting. We're younger, so we can picture ourselves in the future a little better. And I do that constantly where, I want to come back. For me, travel, the mainstream idea of travel is you have a bucket list, you go somewhere and you cross things off your list, right? We all know that. That's today's culture. For me, every time I go somewhere, I'm adding new places. I feel like the more you travel, the more you realize that it's never ending. Because you can go to Germany and you go to Berlin, and a lot of people would say, well, I've done Germany. But for me, I look and I say, well, Hamburg's just up there. And what about Munich? How's that different? And oh, this little town right outside of Berlin, I got to come back and see that stuff. So now I've just added more Germany to my list, right?
Or the locals tell you should really see this place in the spring.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
the seasonal, exactly. And as an outdoorsman, that's hugely the case. You go somewhere sometime of year it looks like this, you go the next time of year it looks like that, and you want to see it all. So I definitely understand that, but I never really thought about that from Grandma Joy's perspective. Realistically, she knows it's like, I'm here and I won't be back.
Yeah, when we walk away from that, or when that boat is sailing past that last iceberg.
You and I are sitting here on this boat thinking,
maybe in 10 years I'll be back.
dude, I've already schemed 5 different ways to come back here.
You know what I mean?
I'm going to apply to be a guide in Antarctica. Oh, I'm going to apply for an artist in residency. Oh, I'm going to whatever.
But when I'm standing next to her on that deck and that last iceberg slips out of view in the horizon, you know, I feel that in a really
It's emotional.
in an emotional way. It's like, there it is. That was our Antarctica experience, and it's, thank God we still have a whole day ahead of us. But you know, that's the way I think now. I try to really lock into visual moments and not let it be this idea of, yeah, okay, that's cool. We'll see it again one day. Just, yeah, that was it. That may be it. I think that's one of the gifts of intergenerational travel, is that ability to look ahead. And I think we have the luxury of time right now, or this perception that we have more time than we might have. I don't know. But just you know, that's a safe, being in your 40s or 30s, it's more comfortable, right? We've got we can afford to not look our mortality in the eye. And that's not, and that could change the second you get a cancer diagnosis, or, you know, people our age get terminal cancer diagnoses all the time. So before that happens, if you can actually look at, I was just in, I told you this at the beginning of the trip, I was just in Tucson, Arizona, at this retreat that was led by Alanis Morissette, and one of the things we did was a deathbed meditation, where she really took us to that moment where, you know, you're about to die. And her words that she used were, she said, life turns to you and asks, how did it go? And when she said that, I never cry anymore. It takes a lot. And what made me cry was that I felt good about the life I've lived, that I would be okay with it if death came knocking right now, even though I have this huge list of things I want to do and see, even with her and without her, that I'm proud of the way I've showed up for my life, you know? And yeah, it would suck that I didn't get to see a wild tiger in India, but I got to work with cheetahs, and I got to see my grandmother step foot on the mainland of Antarctica a couple days ago.
There's always going to be something else.
Yeah, there's never enough time.
Always going to be something else. And the idea is the gratitude for what you have been able to do. Especially here in a place like Antarctica, where, yeah, we're on a nice boat, but the adventures are adventurous. We're getting on Zodiacs. Yesterday it was crazy choppy. The wind here has been insane. It's like
Freezing.
Barely been above zero, you know? The reality of traveling with someone, I mean, you're not even going to like the tour of the world's luxurious hotels, right, where it's just cush and, okay, grandma just hangs out. You're taking her to wilderness areas. This must be exhausting for you. I mean, right now, you brought all these meds in because, I won't say why, but she's in the medical center right now.
Yeah, something minor, but they needed to know all of her dosages. And
that's the reality of course, right? She's a senior citizen. Yeah, she's in her 90s. Like, there's going to be these incidents. What is that like? What is that like?
You know, it's funny, if I can talk about this retreat again for just a second. You know, it's so surreal to tell you, like, Alanis Morissette had us go into these groups. It's the truth. So she broke us into these 4 corners of the room based on, like, what we thought, or what our relationship was to our needs. And one of it was like, I know exactly what my needs are, and I'm entitled to have them met, to, like, I'm so overextended that I don't know what the hell my needs are. And that's where I found myself gravitating towards, even though once we were in our 4 corners, I heard little pieces of insight from every corner that I resonated with. So it's not actually a quaternary choice. But anyway, I thought, that's kind of the way I feel right now, is that as a caretaker, like, I am filling my cup by doing this, but like you said, I'm exhausted. That's just the truth. And you probably can see it in my eyes. I'm tired.
I don't blame you. I'm tired. I'm
Yeah.
not taking care of anybody.
Well, it takes a half an hour to get her into 6 layers of clothing and to get her boots on and to not break her skin doing it, and
The patience that requires.
and also to try to keep. She can't hear, and she gets disengaged, and I feel bad, and
What keeps you going?
just knowing she's not going to be here for much longer. Maybe, I don't know. She could be 110. I don't know, but just knowing that, like, I'm at peace with her age, and it's taken me a long time. Like, after I did the 63 national parks, I honestly didn't want to have another goal. Not that I felt like I'm going to be sad if we don't meet it, but here we are. Now we're actually getting close to this 7-continent goal, and so now I'm hungry for it again. And I'm okay in the sense that having goals keeps you engaged with life and that kind of thing. So, but it's not about like, I don't feel the need to, like, add more to the resume.
Well, you are, though. You're going to lead a tour. Aren't you guys
Yeah.
leading tours now where people can join you guys? You have one coming up in Borneo in January, right?
Right.
So how did that come about?
I think, once again, I didn't even know what Trova Trip was. So it's just this, it's a platform where if you have enough people who follow your travels on social media, if they actually want to travel with you, that there are ways that they can do that. So we're going to Iceland in a few weeks. That'll be our first one. We'll see how that
Oh,
goes.
so Iceland's in January?
Yeah.
Okay. And when's the Borneo trip?
In September.
Next
And that's the one that
September.
people can still register for if they want to. Yeah, we have 20 spaces for that.
Does Grandma Joy want to do this? Like, does she ever talk about...
So where's Borneo? Where's Antarctica?
Right, like, I mean, because she started off probably just taking a road trip with my grandson, and now she's an international figurehead in a way.
I think if you asked her about this, she would tell you that, truthfully, what she loves most about this is meeting you and meeting Victoria and Tracy and
Just
Beam and
being out. And
yeah,
meeting people.
she knows. She thinks that she has dementia because she forgets where she puts things in the house and what. I'm like, Grandma, like,
Bro, I forget where I put things.
you're having. There's a difference between age-related forgetfulness and dementia. I was like, when were you born? I have to, like, prove to her that she doesn't have dementia. But she's so, But it's scary. I see the fear that she has about her own decline, which is really heartbreaking to see. But this is what keeps her. I think she's healthier than she otherwise would have been. I think she would be in a worse state if she weren't out seeing and doing and meeting people and laughing and telling stories. And
So you see the travel invigorating her, not tiring her out or slowing her down.
there's a physical exhaustion that comes with it, but 2 days after, I'll drop her off at her house after a trip, and she'll just collapse on her couch, and then 2 days later, she's just.
Does she live alone?
Yeah.
Oh, she still lives alone.
Yeah.
So she's completely self-sufficient.
Yeah. But and so she it doesn't take her very long to rebound once she gets home. I don't know if it'll be like that when she's 97. But no, I mean, I absolutely believe that this is a really positive thing to do for her. If nothing else, to keep her from being lonely, which I think is perhaps who knows? What's the single most important reason? I think loneliness is something that we have to really combat as we get older. Maintain friendships and travel buddies across the generational divide. Stay physically active, even if it's a walk around the cemetery every day, whatever it takes. Keep moving. And set goals. Have a purpose for what you want to do with your remaining days. And I think if you have those 3 pieces, there may be other things that make it even better, but to me, those are the 3 most important, fundamental tenets of being able to be doing this when we're her age.
So Asia will be the last continent?
No, we have to do Australia. Well, have you heard of Zealandia? Have you heard about this?
I don't think so.
You'll have to Google this. Apparently there are 8 continents, not 7.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
Zealandia?
there are all these like, if you look at how many continents there are in the world, one is like, is Europe really a continent? Europe and Asia are, it's Eurasia, and then there's yeah, they say New Zealand is technically part of a separate continent that is overwhelmingly underwater. But by all the geological definitions of a continent, it fits the criteria, and so
So you have to go to New Zealand
and
too.
Australia. But at least they're close by.
They're very close. Yeah,
So
if you're going out that way.
I think we're gonna call. I think we're. I want to go to. I want to go to New Zealand anyway. So we'll say we have an 8 continent goal.
Once that's over, do you think you guys? Yeah. How do you see the future? I guess you'll just look to her to tell you when she's done.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna go how it's gonna go. I don't know. It might just be that she doesn't wake up one day, and I don't know if that's better or worse. But I don't want to see her. I really would hate. I would hate to see her decline. I want her to. I would like my last memory of her to be smiling in a far off land with new friends that we've just made. I who knows, but I think that it will have to be like a trip like this, walking through snow to see penguins. That was a big undertaking for her age. She's 94 in a few months.
Yeah. I just wonder. I guess what I'm asking, and just to ask more directly, it's you have all this media pressure now, right? You're an influencer. You have outside pressure to keep doing what you're doing. People want to
That's true.
see you go and do these things because they want to write about you. They want you to feature their company. If you're traveling with HX, that's good for HX. Flying with Alaska Airlines, they get the media buzz. So you're going to get pressure. You probably already are to keep going. And I'm just wondering if you've thought about your own limits and when you know you don't want to exploit your grandmother, right?
Well, that's the thing about it, and I don't. I mean, I don't. When we're not traveling, I'm not in her house making her perform like a monkey. Give them what they want, Grandma.
Yeah, I looked at your Instagram account. You're not like making her talk to the camera or anything.
Very
like
little.
that.
I don't
Yeah.
even talk to the camera that much. It's mostly just pictures because I have a full-time job.
I mean, you might even.
I travel for work, so
Yeah, you might look forward to traveling without her, I would think. Do you ever go on your own trips now?
well, I did the trip to Tucson was the first trip I've taken for myself in the last 10 years.
That must have felt good.
It felt really good.
And how did you meet Alanis Morissette to do this?
So I saw her over the summer backstage it was the first time she offered a meet and greet. So I just went backstage before the concert, and she did a Q&A and a guided meditation session. And I told her about my journey with my grandmother, and that I was writing a book, and it was my first book. And I think I'm a good writer, but I'm not a writer by trade. I was trained to chop testicles off dogs. So like, I said, I'm really inspired by your lyricism, and I know a great memoir when I read it. I love Krakauer and so many great writers, but I find myself comparing my writing to theirs, and I think I'm crap. And how do you feel inspired, or allow yourself to be inspired by great writing and not be influenced or biased by that? And we just had a really lovely conversation about finding your voice and ways to do that through either meditation, silence, nature, all the things that I know I already knew that. But just she's been a big influence for me. So anyway, we had a really great human moment. She doesn't want to be treated like a celebrity. She's very much in an era of her life where she just wants to be of the people and not have her fame be a distraction. And so we just had I didn't act like a crazy person, I think. And so she offered this wholeness retreat, and like 1,600 people applied, and I was one of 60 that she picked. And it was just 60 people coming together that are really, like, I would say highly sensitive people, really empathic people that get overwhelmed easily by all the chaos of the world and all the bad stuff that, like watching her, like, did you see the polar bear thing last night? The Soniva's work in the Arctic with the polar bears.
I saw the first part. I didn't see the video. It was at the end, right?
Yeah, it was at the end, and yeah, it was just this window into what's happening with climate change and polar bears in the Arctic. And it's like, some people could watch that and just be like, oh, that's too bad. And I'm like sick to my stomach the whole night thinking about the end of the world and that the polar bears are definitely doomed. And So it's hard when you're wired when you have a brain that's wired like mine. And honestly, it's the empathy that has brought me to this crazy place with my grandmother, to be honest, because it's like I can't just have her be alone in her house with nothing to do and no adventure to speak of, And so I end up in this extreme situation. So that's probably how I ended up meeting Alanis Morissette, because I'm very, very yeah, I think I'm just probably too sensitive for my own good.
Let's finish up. I
Sorry.
know we are a little bit of a time crunch because we got some.
You can edit
We
a
got to
lot of
go.
this.
We got to go. No, dude, this is great. We're gonna roll the whole thing. I just like meeting you, having a conversation. This is exactly what I want the podcast to be. Just the stories behind the stories. So thank you for sharing everything.
Yep.
But I also want to make sure we're in Antarctica. We're gonna go play in a bit. So tell us about the book and what it's going to be about. Because my understanding is, of course, it's a lot to do with you and your grandmother, but more about your personal journey, right?
Yeah, I think what I want people to take from the book is just number one, that we all have the ability to manifest big things in our lives if we have the right intention. If because that's what this was. Like, my intention for why I started this journey with my grandmother was very pure. I think that there were things about it that I had to discover or there were components of it that I had to discover over time. But that, once again, the open road is the best place for that to happen, to really understand yourself and to think about your life and where you've been and where you're going. But the hard stuff, the heavy stuff that is at the root of our journey is something that I could never do justice to that kind of narrative in a 5-minute news interview
100%.
or a 2,000-word article. So I've really held a lot of the private stuff back so that I can tell it my way. Because I think we chatted about this the first day I met you. I was like, no matter how many, I spent months and months and months with this one journalist for a major publication, and then it came out. I'm like, this is just riddled with mistakes.
That's so disappointing.
Yeah,
That's really disappointing.
yeah, it was, and it was in kind of yeah. Anyway, so to have complete control over your own story is important.
Oh, and you
And
get to write a book, man. I
yeah,
mean, what better self-exploration could you do?
that's what I'm trying to approach it that way, so I'm not like scared to death about what's coming up in 2025. I really just I want it to be a labor of love. And
Are we going to see the narrative of your time with your grandmother too, traveling national parks? It's going to be based around this journey too, though, right?
yeah, it's I think that and this is the hardest part about writing the book, is that the reality is that there's this it's a chronological book in one sense, because we're driving towards this end goal of 63 US national parks. But obviously so much of what was happening in the car were flashbacks of my life in my head, some things that I shared with her, some that I didn't, and a lot of conversations that take us back in time. And through that process of flashback, we're actually learning more about each other, and I'm piecing together the story of my family history and understanding the intergenerational trauma that got me to where I was, and ultimately a place of just, yeah. I mean, well, I guess I shouldn't say how I think the book ends, but for me, it's like I said, it's a journey of grievance to grace. The relationship with my father is sort of he's like the third character that's not in the car, that is rarely spoken about but always there. And I never thought that I wasn't going to really discuss him that much in the book. And then, life has a really funny way of handing you really eye-opening. It, Life has a really funny way of just kind of forcing you to look at what you need to look at, no matter how hard you try to avoid it. And
Well, you're looking at his mom all day.
all day,
You hang out with his mom every
yeah,
day.
yeah, I see him in her, I see him in me
Yeah.
in the mirror. And yeah, and it was just it was one of these really random twists of fate, for better or worse. I got a call that he was dying right before we left for American Samoa. We were planning to. I took her down to Florida to see Lake Okeechobee. That was one place in the country we had never seen, and I wanted to try to find the camp that she and my grandpa would go to every summer that I dreamed about as a little boy. And 30 years had passed, and I don't think that camp existed anymore. I think it was under a Walmart parking lot or something. She couldn't find it despite her best efforts, and we're driving all over Lake Okeechobee, just hitting, being smacked in the face with this reality that 30 years went by, and it's a different world we're living in now. And 20 of that 30, I didn't have a conversation with my dad, and then I'm driving back to Fort Lauderdale from our failed attempt at finding Grandpa Bob and Grandma Joy's Okeechobee fishing camp, and my mom tells me my father's on a ventilator, and I had to turn the car around or I had to make that choice to just hold on to grievance or turn the car around and do something I didn't think I could do.
You went to see him?
Yeah.
Did you get to talk to him?
I did.
Would you like to share anything about that?
Well, that's probably like the most important thing to wait and read, I think. But yeah, but I will say that it's the reason why I feel free. It's the reason why I feel like I can live my life for myself and not feel any guilt or remorse, like we were saying about you and like nobody has this perfect life.
No, and even in failure, our parents still teach us something. There's still lessons they show us or teach us even in their failures.
Yeah, and in the end, my ability to it took 20 years and 60,000 plus miles on the open road with my grandmother, but it led me to it took me that those are the links that I had to go to be able to say the words I forgive you. And they in my mind, those are the hardest words to say. They've always been the hardest words to say, and yet when it came right down to it, and you see this man that you've made into this, like, this mountain that you just couldn't scale, this force in your life that was just insurmountable for you to be happy and free and confident and all these things, and you see them reduced to life support in an ER or in an intensive care unit in Shreveport, Louisiana, and you're the only one who can say the words that he could never say, and you say them. That's the only way that you can heal intergenerational trauma and pain. You can only heal it within yourself. You can't do it for anybody else, and I can't beat myself up for the rest of my life that my life story is that I'll never have a loving, happy, fulfilling father-son relationship, because I was just modeling the grievance that was modeled. I was just doing what my father taught me to do, and then I turned it back on him. So it's unfortunate, but that's life. That's life. And I'm at peace. I'm at peace with how everything has happened, and what I could control is the story that's still unfolding.
Do you feel any pressure because of the social media following to keep creating this content?
Well, a little bit. I mean, I think the book's going to help. I think this book will allow me to sort of leapfrog into something new. Because I'm less, to be honest, like we've been talking about my life, and I'm far more interested in hearing other people tell me their stories about what they are doing as a result of hearing our story. That's the only part that makes me, like, in a self-indulgent way. That's the only part that makes me really feel good now, is knowing, like, okay, you saw our story in the news, and then you're sending me a picture of you with your grandpa in Yellowstone or something like that. Like that's where I get, like, really kind of amped up now.
And that's what's happening on social media. I looked at a lot of the comments, and people were just saying how you've inspired them, and that's what sharing your story does. You have to be a little self-indulgent in some ways to share the story, because if you don't share anything, if you're not indulging in that, then nobody's going to know anything.
Well, that's the thing, and there are Grandma Joys all over the world. Grandpa, whoever, Grandpa Bob's too. And I can tell that it's having ripple effects, and with people, stories that I'll never hear. It went out into the masses, and a subset of people are going to run with it and change their life accordingly, and then somebody will see them and it will go on. And I think that's really my main focus with the book project, is just to make sure that this is articulated in a way that is sort of just really makes people think about themselves. I want it to be in service to other people, not a self-indulgent story about all the great things that we got to see and do, but a deeper conversation about what is a life well lived. How do you make sure that when life turns to you and asks, how did it go, that you can sit there with a smile on your face with death right around the corner and be completely fine. Not only fine, but proud of the life you've lived and how you chose to ride the wave of this crazy conscious existence that we have. I mean, it is remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, when you embrace life in that way, when you can shift out of that pessimistic mindset into one of optimism and gratitude and opportunity, the sun shines even brighter.
And thank God it is here.
And speaking of, let's go enjoy our day in Antarctica. I think we're paired up to kayak later together, so we can continue the conversation off air. And thanks again for taking the time, man. Appreciate you very much.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode today. If you liked it, you may enjoy episode 1, Skiing to the South Pole with Son of a Sorbet. Keep your eye out for episode 3, broadcasting from New York City. Our guest will be a freestyle rapper who performs on a New York City bus tour and who also produces a lot of virtual tourism content, a growing segment in the travel industry. Until next time, you can find me at Wake and Wander Will. The terrain, flying high up once again. Got my crew sitting healthy and my boo living wealthy. Level 99, never settle in my mind. So I pedal and I climb up the pedestal and find almighty weapons. So I calm, lightly step into the castle. Satchel, tackled, wrestled down the corridor where I'm grounded through the floor. Roundhouse into my core, down, out, and through the door. Sword down at my side, I gotta round up and ride. Face boss, break jaws till I take off. Face off, stop and swing my serious strike. This is it. Take the title, disappear in the night to the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom overseas with the wisdom guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole wide world. Slay the boss in the castle when we cross final battle. Then I walk out and travel to the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom overseas with the wisdom guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole wide world. Slay the boss in the castle when we cross final battle. Then I walk out and travel to